they've done some very nice, very good, and their flat games, or pancake games, as you want to call them, are phenomenal. So
Hmm.
they've got a pedigree. It's one of these things where like they can bring the goods when it comes to PC gaming, and they've been doing it a long time. And then they come and this was what I felt was the first game where a publisher who was well established, who had backing, who had the resources and the talent, has done it before. They did it early 2000, with 2016, 2017. They put out
Hmm.
good quality games, and then they
Hmm.
kind of, I don't, it's it what I was kind of calling a second wave VR game, and I don't want to say second gen, but this is definitely feels like second wave. They've learned their lessons. They've looked around and see what other even indie developers and established developers are doing, things that we thought 3 years ago were a big deal, but turned out not to be, like locomotion type stuff,
Hmm.
or giving everybody an option of everything to do. And that was the huge thing, is like, oh, they have every option available you can imagine, with locomotion and with options for movement and options for graphic. You can tweak the graphics very extensively, and those things stuck out to me instantly as soon as I started the game up, and then visually and graphically. So, I can imagine anybody that's interested in Stormland has been out there. It's been out for long enough that they've seen videos on it. But if you haven't, the best way I can describe it, as I always describe it, kind of as a mix of Lone Echo, because you're a robot, you're an android robot type, and it has a climbing aspect because there is a good bit of climbing in it, and like leaping with your hands and things like that. I felt it was a little Robo Recall because it's not a sim shooter. It's not like
Hmm.
it's not that. It still has an arcadey feel, yet incredibly
Hmm.
polished. Epic
Hmm.
Games did an incredible job of Robo Recall. And then kind of a Halo thing because it's dealing with aliens, and I feel kind of like the Tempest and the Flood. Like there's some correlation there. Like it just kind of felt the same, like a very similar vein in there. And and
Hmm. Hmm.
and and Halo's one of those games that just blew you away the first time you played it. It was
And,
just
and I feel like the
beautiful,
open world,
immersive.
like,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, like Halo has kind of this like open world kind of
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah,
like there's you get into battles with the Covenant in Halo,
yeah,
but it feels like it's like the strategy is kind of up to you on how you want to tackle things, and
yeah,
I get
yeah,
a
yeah,
similar
yeah,
sense when I'm
yeah, yeah.
playing
And it's
Stormland too.
kind of a feel for that, and then beautiful, of course, and then kind of a got some Borderlands or some any kind of game where there's crafting and you're having to craft, but it's not heavy crafting. It's not you're going to spend hours and hours doing it, but it has enough to where you're kind of in control of your augmentations, or being able to
Yeah.
jump farther, or weapon and power ups and things like that. So that's and the story. The story for me, I kind of thought like for a game with the length that it is, the amount of time spent setting up the story. I mean, I know you have to have a story in it, but it's weird because in VR games, if you're going to spend an hour, if it's and in this one, if I think it's about 6 hours, between 5 and 6 hours is officially what the publisher, what they've said as far as the length
Hmm.
of the story mode. And we'll get into
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
later, of the fact that the game actually like kind of morphs after you finish the story and goes into like a cycling mode where over and over again you once a week, every Tuesday, the world itself will reset itself and start over from the next level. And if you
Hmm.
this was one thing I saw online, people wanted to know about this. All right, I finished the story mode, and it's 5 or 6 hours, and then after that, what do I do? And
Hmm.
the game itself is set up with multiple islands, and you can kind of fly from one island to another, which I thought initially would be kind of dull, but it's actually pretty fun. It's actually a
Yeah.
really cool mechanic.
Yeah.
As you fly through, there's like speed power ups that you can fly through, and if you hit them, you lose power, you lose energy, and things like that. So it's actually kind of a neat mechanic to go from
Yeah,
one island to
when I
another.
tried it the first time, I kind of like didn't exactly understand how it worked. Like when I was at OC6 and I was trying to quickly figure out, okay, how do I get from island to island?
Yeah, yeah.
Like it was a little bit weird. But at home, when I actually got to listen to the tutorial, kind of explain to me what to do, and like in practice, it was actually like I thought it was really well done. Just like it's a nice change of pace between, you know, being on foot and traversing things just like normally on the islands, and then being able to like fly in the air by holding out your hands,
Yeah.
but also to be able to zoom at those kind of speeds, because you really like I thought they did a good job of being able to give you control and make you feel like you were moving really fast, but also doing it in a way that doesn't make you sick. So,
well, and the other thing I was kind of taken back by was it's actually a pretty complicated game. There is a lot going on. There's a lot of places on your body to hold weapons. There's a lot of equipment on your body, and I always talk about Onward, and I play a lot of Onward, and there's a learning curve on that game for picking up your weapon, holstering your weapon, reloading, moving stuff around. I drop stuff on the ground a lot. And one thing I really, really love about Stormland is they've really optimized that whole thing of where within a minute, there's no dropping of a weapon. It'll kind of hover for a minute, and then if you walk away, it kind of just disappears. Or if you let go of it, it's really, really smart on knowing if you hold your hand so far out and let go of a gun on your right arm, it goes right back to your right, your right leg and your right hip, or your chest if you have like a health pack or something like that.
And they got rid of reloading, which is like,
which a game like this, like usually I'm a big fan on a military shooter. Of course, I want to reload. I want to feel like I'm reloading. It helps the balance of the game. But on this game, it just really fits that there's just no reloading because it's just waves of enemies and stuff like that. So I think
you're just constantly picking up new weapons.
Yeah, it's a really good mix. The other mechanic that I thought was really, really cool about Stormlands that I don't think I've really seen before is the tearing apart of weapons, and then you drop them, and then the leftover components, the metal and the different components of whatever you rip apart with your hands, automatically gets uploaded into you, and you can kind of see it floating through the air as you get more ammo. And it's kind of like you're crafting stuff, but just by ripping weapons apart. So you're not always having to you're not having to grab a weapon that has a little bit and then swap it out.
That's actually that's a really good example. Like I was going to ask you, but I think that's like the perfect example to lead into this discussion. Like I think it's little touches like that make you realize that Insomniac was really focused on making like all of the little interactions you're able to do in VR feel satisfying. Like I can imagine that that's something like, I mean, clearly there's materials in the game, there's crafting, there's all of that. But I'm sure someone there thought that it would be fun to disassemble the gun like that, like physically, like try to take it apart in VR. And so they're like, well, how do we make that into a fun gameplay mechanic?
Well, that's
something that like there's so many little things in this game that just like the motion and the action of doing that thing, like in any other game, it wouldn't even really be something that you'd really be thinking that much of, even in VR. But somehow in Stormland, it's all those little things like collecting health, for example. Yeah. It's like you're not just picking up an item
or walking over something
or walking over it. You're literally like grabbing a tube and using both of your hands to like open the tube up.
Yeah.
And there's something like super satisfying about the way they make all that stuff feel in Stormland, that I feel like those are like all the little things that they do to make this game feel like, man, like Insomniac knows how to make a cool VR game.
And that's one of the reasons I said it reminds me of Robo Recall, when where you're ripping apart robots and things, and that had a very satisfying feel. Like it was just fun to just do that, and you got into it. And this has that same feel, and I didn't get tired of it. It wasn't like, oh, I got to rip apart another gun or whatever. It just felt like that was the world I was in, and I'm a robot. I can just rip stuff apart, and I have a super.
And it's like every time you do it, you get like a little satisfaction. Like it feels right when you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And I got faster and faster at it, and so those all for me were when I was playing it with the story mode in those weeks leading up to it. And let's get everything straight. It's a phenomenal game. It's gorgeous. It's very well optimized. It ran perfectly on my system. Not that I have a low-end system or extremely high-end system. I have kind of a medium system. In 2016 I had a monster system. In 2019 I have a medium system. But that's gaming, PC gaming. But it runs extremely well. I think I haven't really seen reports of anybody, with a decent system saying, "Oh, it runs lousy." I know it does run in Revive. That is a whole different subject of tweaks and hacks to get this to run on say an Index or a Vive or a non Oculus headset. This is an Oculus published game. They are the ones that backed it. They wrote the check. So it is run, it's an Oculus store game. It's an exclusive for Oculus. So there is tons of information out there on how to get this to run on Index and Vive and other non-Oculus headsets. But with that being said, I played it on my CV1, my original Rift, and within 20 minutes, I thought the whole time like, oh, I was on an Index and now I'm going to be playing it on my Rift. And honestly, the game is so it's just a great, fluid, fun. I was just really impressed with it. And I kind of just forgot I had my Rift on it, or my Rift CV1. I was like, oh, okay. And I got into the gameplay, which is like a sign of a very, very well done, engaging game. And I was worried too that I kind of even wrote in the review that like it's going to take you a minute to get used to the controls and stuff. But I feel like the game does a very good job of introducing you to the world, introducing you to the mechanics, and then a little by little the whole aspect of reaching up and pulling your arm off and then putting it on the crafting thing, upgrading it. I thought that was amazing. Something we haven't really seen before. But it's little touches, big touches like that really kind of put this game over the top. Now, that's not all perfect news in my review that's online or what I thought, but I felt playing it that, and this is nothing really on the game. It's very easy at the first part. You can go in very early on if you have any proficiency at shooter games or any kind of VR proficiency, and this is not like your first VR game. You go in and you can waste a whole field of guys that are surrounding you very quickly, and you're early on in the game you're provided with a shield that you have on one hand that you can bring up at any moment. You have multiple weapons. I mean, it's not just the weapons you have on your hips. Your actual hands can change and turn into an energy weapon with a certain button combination. So you're pretty heavily armed from the very early part of the game. So I felt when I was playing it, it felt like, oh, this is easy. I want to really see, what the later difficulty levels, and that's when we get to really when you finish the story mode. As you get progressing the story mode, it gets harder. Once you finish the story mode and you start getting the cycling world, the world that changes every Tuesday, it ramps up. If you go through and defeat, what is it? I forgot what the final. The Terminus? Is that what
the Tempest? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Terminus. You're right.
If you defeat the Terminus, and that's at the very end, and you reach your goal, when basically you ascend to the next level, and come Tuesday of the next week, the game resets itself for you, but the enemies are more, they're deadlier, they're harder. You still have all the weapons and all the upgrades and everything like that. I saw online people were like, well, if I don't finish, do I lose all my progress? And the kind of cool thing about it is, no, you don't. You stay right where you're at, but you don't go on to the next level. The game stays at the same kind of difficulty settings. So as you go week by week, it will get harder and harder and more challenging with much more aggressive and harder to defeat enemies. And since we're only, a couple weeks in really to the game even being out, there's nobody that's really got to that next level. So I look forward to seeing videos from people that are, beaten the tournament several times and they're on like extremely hard missions, and hopping into a co-op and be able to see like how smart they get. And they, we talked to them. That was one of the early things we sent a message to Insomniac, and they got back to us, and that was one of our questions. Like, is there a skill level? Can you put it on like super hard or elite? Or I use like Doom. I said like, does it hurt me plenty? Or nobody said a word. But, and they said, well, that's the whole point of the weekly cycle. That if you beat it on every cycle, it's harder and harder. So okay, that makes sense.
And apparently there's like like you said, we're still early on in the games. The game since the game's release, but it sounds like if you're able to beat it after after the second level, or like if you're able to beat the terminus like 2 weeks in a row or whatever it was to get to the second stage, that there's a special ending if you beat it at the harder difficulty.
Yeah.
But I'm not. Yeah, I haven't seen it personally myself yet or anything like that. But
well, and the whole game's kind of open. It's up to them. It's their servers. So as we go on, it's not. They have announced nothing as far as anything like DLC or add-ons or changes to the game. But a company like this was as attentive as they are to their games, and I would be shocked to not see some announcements in the future where there was maybe a different kind of enemy. I'm not saying more weapons.
Yeah.
Something to just kind of mix it up, like, come January 1st, people have reached a certain level and look forward to whatever, like something to kind of kick it up and make it.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've had that before, where there's this kind of persistent world that is going on as far as the VR gaming, that when you come back and you beat it, it's harder the next time. So I really like that. This is a co-op design game, which again, another thing we've not really had, a co-op only, single player or co-op game, which is awesome to think that VR is now in a place where there's enough people playing that you can have a very big, robust co-op portion of the game, which it has. So that is very refreshing. But all in all, I did put a little part of my article. I have kids. I have 4 kids, and I have a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, well, almost 6-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. Would I let my 9-year-old play this? She plays Fortnite. She's played classic, Wolfenstein 486 and stuff like that. Yeah, I think I would. I don't think that the violence in it is anything that is too brutal. It is the story itself. The story itself.
They're all machines too.
They're all machines. The one, the girl that's in it that has a plant that's like taking over her body. And I won't ruin the story or anything, but you kind of really feel him. I think my kids would feel very emphatic towards that character and would be sad to see her get hurt and things like that. So, but the combat portion of it and just fighting, robots and aliens and stuff like that. My 9-year-old, no problem. My 5, soon to be 6-year-old, it's not her game. She's a Beat Saber girl, so that's her game. So if you have kids, I think if your kids play Fortnite or they're in that 9 or 12 range, I don't think it's a really fun game. And what's also neat is now that we have things like the Link and to be able to have multiple PCs, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot more. What used to be such a big thing of if you have 2 headsets, have 2 PCs, it was more of a rarity. Now it seems like, well, there's so many people that have VR headsets. If they have a Quest, well, guess what? Now you have 2 PC headsets, VR headsets. So, of course, won't it be awesome that we have lots more co-op games where one person in one space and one person in another in the same house can play together. So I think that's really, really pretty neat to have. What would I say? Would I say it's worth the price? What is it at? What was the sale?
I want to say it's $40 probably. Yeah, I don't know about a sale, but I think it came out at $40.
$40. I think wholeheartedly it's worth $40. The thing that my thing is we always talked about, we want the best developers out there, AAA games. We want games that are now, yes, this is not a 40-hour game, but I still think in VR, like a 10-hour or a 6-hour, that range from that 6 to 10 hour, that's still a lot of gameplay in VR where I'm standing and I'm playing a game with a story, and then once I finish it, it's still like there's $40 games that have 6 or 7 hours, and everybody was excited and thrilled about it, and had 6 hours of gameplay and everybody went nuts over it. And do they play it anymore?
Yeah.
No, they don't, because it was from 2 years ago and it was $40, and now it's probably $8 on sale. So a game that's $40 that I think is very well worth it, that after you finish the 6-hour thing, the 6-hour story in a couple of weeks, it totally has a reason to come back and play it because you can beat it. It gets harder and harder. I love that. I love the concept
Yeah.
of that. I know that a lot of people didn't warm up to that. They just want that big number. They want Skyrim 100+ hour, Fallout 4, 100+, 40+ hour gameplay in a VR game. I think I'm 40 years old and I work full time and I got 4 kids, so it is almost really impossible to try to say I'm going to play a 40 or 100 hour game in VR. If I played every night for 3 hours a night, I mean, that's months and months and months to try to finish a 40 or 100 hour game.
Yeah.
It's smaller.
No, VR, I mean, you have to remember VR is different in terms of like how much time you're able to commit to the headset versus, being locked off from the world like you are in VR is like a very different thing than I think a lot of people are used to. And like going off of what you were saying, like I think a lot of what makes Stormland special and what makes it, to me, I think worth the price is the fact that you're getting this attention to detail that only really a studio that is both seasoned in terms of game development but also understands VR well enough to know what's important and what isn't. Like all of these little details that they put into interacting with the world, like just making sure that all the interactions feel fun, and then like the way the animation and characters and all of these little things like come across in VR. Like I think they made so many good decisions in terms of what works and what doesn't. Like they excuse me. Sorry. Ooh.
Well, just just the gun. Like when you have the two-handed rifle in your hands and you pull it apart just a little bit, and that kind of engages it, and then it just has a great feel to it. Force feedback, the haptic feedback is amazing.
So it's like you're paying for this attention to detail. Like when you think of what effort goes into making a game. Like on one side you can spend a bunch of money to make a really big game. From the other hand, you can spend a bunch of money to make, a really focused game. And I feel like Stormland is a good combination of the two, because on one hand, they've done a good job of making it as big as they can, given what they set out to do. But then at the same time, they narrowed in and made all those little things that really matter in VR really stand out. Like so I personally think Stormland's like a great balance, because like to some extent, like just a huge game in VR, in order to make something that big, you would probably lose out on some of the attention to detail that a game like Stormland provides. If that makes sense.
I think it's great. I think we need more games from established. I love the genre. I love that it's science fiction. I love the robot combat. I love the shooter genre. There's a lot of really cool stuff together. So it's an easy for anybody that has a VR headset. Anybody out there that's listening to that, is on the fence or whatever. I would not. I wholeheartedly think it's worth $40 as far as what you're getting for the game. But do you want to wait a year to play it and let it go down to $29, $25 or something? That's up to you.
See, we're all crossing, like, because here's the thing too. Like, if you're new to VR, even if you're not new to VR, it's like the number of awesome experiences that you'll get to have in a VR headset at this point, I think, is a lot lower than, like, there aren't as many games on a new platform like VR.
Exactly, yeah.
When compared to to somebody like if you're if you play a lot of traditional games on PC or Xbox, PlayStation, like every year there's going to be a bajillion titles that are pretty good to choose from.
Exactly.
Like in VR, there aren't as many, and so I think there's less reason to be worried every now and then when something comes out that like Stormland is really, really good. And if you're at all interested in an action type game like we've been describing, then I think it's absolutely worth picking up, because there's not gonna I think so far anyways, like it doesn't often come around where there's like a game like, oh man, this is like some games in VR are kind of more niche, and there's different types of genres for different, but like Stormland, it seems to me like it's a game, if you like action games, like this is one that you definitely want to try, because it sets the bar in a lot of ways for, I think, what we're going to see to come.
So you just bought a Rift S.